Welcome to Developing Your Sales Career. My name's Jim Kaiser, and I want to begin by explaining why I developed this sales curriculum. Let me start with my background. I graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in organizational communications and a minor in marketing. I had no clue what to do my first day in sales. So as I was graduating, I ended up networking my way into a position where I was near my hometown because I literally had no money. I had $500 in my pocket, and I ended up going home really with all of my belongings in my car and was going to start my first day about a month after I graduated college. Again, I had no sales experience. I had no sales knowledge. I had no basis to be a salesperson because I didn't have the education for it, because it didn't exist. This is why I started this sales curriculum. So listen to the story. First day, I get there. I'm wearing my only suit. My director of sales came up from Chicago, Illinois, up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and gave me a whopping half hour of sales training. It was a small telecommunications company called LDDS Communications. And my job was pretty simple. It was to go out, get phone bills, tell them we can save them money, talk to decision makers, and then bring them back and analyze them and eventually try to close a sale. Well, again, I had a half hour of sales training, which really didn't amount to much, and I didn't know what I was doing. So that day, the director of sales asked me, after a half hour of sales training, to go cold call. Well, I looked up in the air and I said, "It's 78 degrees. What do you mean cold call?" Well, that was my first mistake. That director of sales looked at me and said, "You're kidding me. You don't even know what you're doing, do you?" And I was honest. I said no. So right after that, he said, all you have to do is go ask for phone bills, tell them we can save them money, and bring them back and give me a call. Oh, and by the way, you better get 100 cards, business cards, or you're fired the next day. This was my introduction to sales. So I ended up going out, pounding the pavement, if you will, ended up coming back at about 8:30 p.m., and I called the director of sales at his home. Now, mind you, there were no laptops at this time, or at least we didn't have any. There were no mobile phones. So I got back to the office and I called and I said, I did what you told me to. I did some cold calls. Well, his reply was, well, how many cold calls did you do and how many cards did you get? Did you get 100? Otherwise, you're fired. And I said, no, sir, I got 107. At this point, I was very fearful of losing my job. So he didn't believe me, of course, and he said, you're kidding me. And I said, no, I'm not. So he asked me to copy them over and fax them. Well, in those days, in the late 80s, early 90s, you have to remember that there weren't fax machines that went very fast, and also the copier machines. So I had to copy each one of those one by one. So there was about 15 pieces of paper that I had to fax. And if you remember what the fax machines were like, they had fax paper and they went real, real slow. So by about 10:30 at night, I ended up calling the director of sales. His name was Craig. Ended up calling him back at home and saying, I did all my cold calls. I got you the cards. Sent them over. Take a look. Well, he actually took a look and there was a $15,000 phone bill. And he says, did you realize you have a $15,000 phone bill here? And I said, yeah, I mean, that's what you told me to get. And of course, he turned around to me and said, what did you tell him? And I said, I told him exactly what you told me to tell him, which is, I believe we can save you money. Well, he asked me if I realized that I only had a $3,500 a month quota. And at that point I said, the obvious, what's a quota? So bottom line is, that was my introduction to sales. He ended up coming up to Milwaukee the next day, hung up the phone, said he'd be there in the morning. We ended up doing a proposal, signing this first deal my first week. It was $15,000, which I had a $3,500 quota. I was nearly 500% of quota my first week. But it wasn't due to my skill. It truly was luck, hard work, and I didn't even know what I was doing. So at that point, I absolutely committed to making sure that this sales curriculum would be online one day. My goal is so you don't have to face the same challenges on your first day in sales as I did. So let's talk a moment about the structure and the assignments in this course. You'll be keeping a journal, and each lesson will contain 1 or 2 journal assignments. You'll be handing in your journal at the end of lesson 4 and again at the end of lesson 8. The content in this course is something you need to experiment with and practice in order to feel comfortable. Again, sales is 50% science, 50% art. So we'll be covering various techniques and strategies, and your challenge will really be to find the ones that work for you. In my experience, I've found that being a good salesperson is much about knowing yourself as knowing the product. So this week's journal is about identifying your values and developing your personal mission statement. Whether you're new to a career in sales or wanting to develop further as a sales professional, this course will give you the information and the tools for success. So let's get started with lesson 1.